Just hours before the House was set to adjourn early for its month-long recess to avoid tackling the Epstein file issue, a subcommittee of the House Oversight Committee passed a motion to subpoena the Department of Justice for the full, unredacted release of the files related to the late and infamous Jeffrey Epstein. The motion was introduced during a hearing on unaccompanied immigrant children by the ranking member of the Federal Law Enforcement Subcommittee of the Oversight Committee, Democrat Congresswoman Summer Lee of Pennsylvania. It passed on a vote of 8-2, with 3 Republicans joining the Democrats. So what impact might this have on all of the drama surrounding the Epstein files? With me now to talk about this and more is Congressman Scott Perry, a member of the Oversight Committee, also a member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, and the former chairman of the House Freedom Caucus. He represents the 10th Congressional District of Pennsylvania. Congressman Perry, welcome back to Washington Watch. Thanks so much for joining us today.
It's great to be with you, Tony. And I would just say, look, when President Biden was the president, they weren't interested. My friends on the other side of the aisle they weren't interested in this. At that time, many Republicans, including myself, were calling for the release so that the American people could understand what happened with Jeffrey Epstein. Merrick Garland wasn't interested. I've called for a briefing from the Intelligence Committee, of which I'm a member of, early in the year. I've already called for the Department of Justice to release the information and appoint a special counsel. I've called for the release of the grand jury testimony that has been hidden from public view. And I've also called for the protection of Ghislaine Maxwell. So my position has never changed on this. I'm exactly where President Trump is, who's ordered his Department of Justice to not only get the testimony from Ghislaine Maxwell, but to release the files. So this is nothing new. This is theater by the Democrats that want to make something out of something that they weren't interested in. Not only were they not interested in this when Joe Biden was the president and Merrick Garland was the attorney general, they also weren't interested in over 400,000 unaccompanied minors, many thousands of which have been lost by the Biden administration.
Congressman Perry, there's no question that there is political theater here, and
right.
Both the Democratic Party and I would say the legacy media have seized upon this for political advantage. But I want to go to your second point, and that is the consistency of your position and of many Republicans. I think that is the issue here, is that there is a lack of some consistency among some Republicans, because there was a promise that this information was going to be released, and all of a sudden, where the public is told there is no additional information, the Department of Justice was not going to release it. And so I think it's the issue of the lack of consistency of some that has made this more of an issue than I think would have been if it would have been released.
I would tend to agree with you, and I can't speak for other folks. I haven't seen the files, and I understand that we want to make sure that we safeguard the names and the personally identifiable information of potential victims and folks like that. I certainly get that. But I think the American people are very curious to know if their government supported the essentially the kidnapping and raping of underage children for some kind of extortion against foreign leaders or something like that. They want to know if their government was involved in that, and they want to know who ordered such a thing and why. What was so valuable that it was worth safeguarding Jeffrey Epstein from the long arm of justice in that regard. And I think that's completely appropriate. And like I said, my position has never changed on that. And you know, to the president's point, where he's called for the release of this information, I think that the president probably, you know, and I can't really even speak for him, but just from what I know, he's watched himself be persecuted by made-up information, what he calls fake news, over and over again. And I think that there's some realistic concern that the Democrats, Merrick Garland, Joe Biden, Barack Obama, attorneys general, many have placed incorrect or misleading information in the files just to make sure that Donald Trump is dirtied up. And I think it's a reasonable concern by the president and the administration.
To that point, Congressman Perry, the American people was able to filter through that previously Do you not think that they can handle that information again and sort fact from fiction, given that there's a big distrust of the media and what the media puts out? But here's the polling data, and this is across the board with most polling entities, is that only about 16 to 17% of the American public agree that the administration is handling this well, and that would include the U.S. Congress. I mean, this is an issue of trust in government, which has been at an all-time low during Joe Biden. And I think a lot of the hope was it was going to be restored, and this is a major setback, in my opinion.
Yeah, I hate to agree with you on that that's true, but I think it is true. And like I said, I don't have the files. I can't release them because I don't have them in my possession, which is why my position has always been the same. And I think the American people deserve to know what their government was involved in. And so regardless of the reason, I think the only way to restore the trust that you're talking about is to be fully transparent, regardless of how embarrassing it is to the federal government and to the people involved, especially such accusations that are so horrific. And, we just need to see the information. The American people are smart. We can figure it out and then move on from there. And, this is a case where I think the intelligence community is out over its skis, is out of control, and needs to be brought to heel, because I suspect they might not want this information released. I'm not sure. But if that's the case, then that goes to the trust issue. And it's right that the American people should have these questions. It is, if the information belongs to the FBI or the CIA or somebody like that, it's not their information. That information belongs to the citizens of America.
Final question on this, Congressman Scott Perry. In your opinion, does this issue go away without the release of the information?
I don't think it does go away. I think that it's exactly why I voted the way I did and why I have been consistent on this the whole way through. We have called for the release of the information, and Republicans are in charge of the House of Representatives, the Senate, and the executive branch. So it's on us, and I want to remain consistent for all the right reasons, and I think I've done so.
Well, and I want to commend you for that. That's why you're frequently on this program. You are consistent in your positions. And I am grateful that you joined with the Democrats, even though they were motivated by political theater and using this as political leverage. Your consistency, I think, is in step with where the American people want to see Congress go. We've got about 3 minutes left, Congressman Perry.
Sure.
I want to shift gears to the international front. Steve Witkoff, the special envoy for peace mission, said his team of mediators is coming home from Doha because Hamas clearly shows a lack of desire to reach a ceasefire in Gaza. I mean, this is something we've been hearing about 50 days. We're going to get a peace agreement there. The president pushing hard Israel to move forward. Israel's at the table. Hamas is not. Where does that leave Israel and the U.S. as they seek a resolution to the war there in Gaza?
Unfortunately, Tony, I think that it leaves Israel, which I don't think is surprised at this, but certainly people in the United States, with the realization that Hamas has never been serious about a peace agreement. They've never been serious about relenting on their hatred of Jews and Israel and their interest and guiding principle of destroying and ridding the world of Israel, the Jewish state. They're never going to do it, and all they're doing is playing for time. It's why they took the hostages as leverage. They don't plan on giving them up. They don't plan on relenting. Unfortunately, that is the reality of who Hamas is and who the Islamists are. And the sooner we understand and recognize and acknowledge and accept that, I think the better off we'll be. While I would like a different outcome, it's simply not realistic with the ideology of this barbaric, religious, anti-West, anti-Israel, anti-Christianity group of people. And that's just who we're dealing with.
About a minute and a half left, Congressman Perry. In his statement, Mr. Witkoff also said, quote, "We will now consider options to bring the hostages home." What might that entail? And should this scare Hamas, thinking that the United States is going to weigh in to get these hostages home?
Well, I hope that Hamas will be will be convinced that it's the right thing to do if they want to remain a part of life on this planet at this time. I think that that be well advised from their viewpoint. I think the United States and Israel, the people of Israel, of course, the family and the loved ones of these hostages are fed up with the game, the long-standing play for power here. And I think the United States is kind of at, unfortunately, our last resort. We always want to put diplomacy first and trying to work things out, come to some reasonable consensus between two differing bodies. Unfortunately, one is intractable. They are violent, and they don't respect the lives of others. They don't even, let's face it, they don't even respect the lives of the people that they represent. Right. They use them as political pawns and sacrifice their very lives. That's who we're dealing with. So, yeah, I suspect that the United States is prepared to use means necessary to get the hostages out, and I hope they do.
Congressman Scott Perry, always great to see you, my friend. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you. God bless you.